I feel like we've ridden on such a razor edge of atonality and dissonance and insanity. Sometimes we'd be like, what if we just did a perfect fifth, or power
Yeah.
chord or a minor chord? Should we dare to do a minor chord? Like, because normally it's like a major minor seventh with a flat second or something like let's get disgusting. And of course, we're still doing that, but it doesn't hurt to occasionally me and the bass play the same line,
Yeah.
which is something I think we didn't normally do. So yeah, we took some risks to take us out of our comfort zone, which always pays off, I feel.
This is Tom from Ghost Cult, and we are delighted to be joined by Zachary Ezrin of Imperial Triumphant, who are going to be releasing their latest album, Goldstar, on Century Media Records on the 21st of March. Zach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
So I've had the chance to listen to the album a bit, and it's really impressive. I think people are going to be, really blown away when it comes out. There's the technicality that I guess people would come to expect from the band. You've got all these kind of like different elements that I can hear through it. There's death metal aspects to it. There's this avant-garde. Sometimes there's even kind of, there's a bit of grindcore in there, I would say. The playing is really impressive, but also the dynamics as well. The way that you go from these parts, which are real kind of barrages, to the more kind of atmospheric elements to it, and the interplay as well between like the different styles you have on the tracks. Like you have this kind of, I don't know if you'd call it an interlude exactly, but in the middle of the album, there are these two short tracks that have like very different sonic aspects to them. So how early on did you sort of have a clear picture of the way you wanted the album to be altogether?
Great question. I would say, look, some of this stuff just happens,
Yeah.
It sort of falls into place and it reveals itself. But also there were certain elements that we put on ourselves, like certain boundaries we put on ourselves, so to speak. Like we try to keep songs under 5 minutes. We try to focus more lean into rock formats instead of more classical or free, through composed formats. I think that does gel very well with the style of music that we play.
Yep.
Because it's still very much an Imperial record. But when you have verses and choruses and try to put hooks into it, it makes the whole thing a little more digestible, a little less insane.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like in a good way. It makes it less, oh, you have to listen to this song 10 times for it to finally click, Like,
yep.
And realistically, I think it makes it a little more fun.
Yeah, I think there's definitely immediacy to it. Like the first time I listened to it, to your point, I felt like I could grab onto the tracks without it being so dense that I had to listen to it repeatedly to kind of like go, what are they actually doing there? But still at the same time being technical. It's not like it's dumbed down in any way.
No, and that was the exciting challenge that we proposed to ourselves, which is like, can we still be Imperial Triumphant? We're, shorter formats, more try to write some hooks, try to write some choruses. And I think we did a great job.
Definitely.
I'm really, really happy with how it came out. And then we sent it to the label and they were very happy. And they're not always, like they tell it how it is. They don't blow smoke. So
yeah,
I'm happy. Yeah, I think we did a decent job.
And I think I forget if it was from you or someone else in the band, there was a quote that the making of the album was shaped by 2 years of fairly extensive touring that you did. So what kind of impact did that have? And, what were kind of like...
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. I apologize. That's where we got the idea to just try shorter format songs. We do so much touring, and sometimes you're on a festival slot or a support slot, and so you have 30 minutes. Before we could only maybe play 3 songs because they're so long.
Yeah.
Kind of annoying to shape a set list. So what if we have 5-minute songs and then you could just move them around much easier, play more songs? It just made sense for us. And also we try to always do stuff different,
Yeah.
Even for a band like us, which is considered weird or out there, if we did another record that was weird and out there, that wouldn't be that different.
That's it. It's like, it makes me think of the David Lynch thing. Like David Lynch made The Straight Story, which was like a nice, sweet movie and nothing crazy happens. And that was the surprise because everyone was used to him doing something completely weird and out there. So like by not doing something weird, that was actually the weird thing from his point of view.
Exactly.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the kind of Fritz Lang associations of the album, because you have this kind of Metropolis imagery. And I was wondering, was that something that was kind of an inspiration for the making of the music, or was it more just you wanted to have something visual to represent it at the end of the process?
It's so funny. We get that a lot. And look, obviously, Fritz Lang's Metropolis is a tremendous influence on us since we started wearing masks and singing about New York. However, specifically talking about the album cover, we must have been more of a subconscious thing, because the idea behind the cover is more based around like vintage cigarette advertisements. That's where
Okay.
talent comes from.
Yeah.
And I told Zbigniew, I said, what do you think about maybe we do like a giant robot woman and she's walking through a major city? Like, that's kind of cool. And that's what he came up with. But I don't think we ever explicitly discussed doing something like with the Machine and Mensch and Metropolis and that whole thing. But again, of course, it's so deeply ingrained in everything that we do that it's like, it probably doesn't even need to be spoken, you know?
And thinking about that visual side of things, I was thinking to myself, listening to the album, you do have this kind of cinematic, like gives this kind of cinematic impression, the music. And I was wondering, when you're making it, and I know that, you know, New York is kind of a big inspiration for the band in general. So presumably, you know, it's like the skylines and all kinds of visual aspects of it. How much would you say that you kind of like have a visual picture in mind when you're making the music?
I don't know if there's a vision. I think it's more like there's a lot of cinema that influences the music. And so probably where it comes from, you know, like cinema is obviously a visual medium. So like, inspiration from that, then for surely it'll feel like that in our music.
Do you think that there was anything from that point of view that was inspiring you this time round compared to before?
Maybe just like less of a fear of tonality. You know, I feel like we've ridden on such a razor edge of atonality and dissonance and insanity. Sometimes we'd be like, what if we just did a perfect fifth, or, you know, power chord or a minor chord? Should we dare to do a minor chord? You know, like, because normally it's like a major minor seventh, you know, with like with a flat second or something like let's get fucking disgusting. And of course we're still doing that, but it doesn't hurt to you know, occasionally me and the bass play the same line, you know, which is something I think we didn't normally do. So we took some risks within our to take us out of our comfort zone, which always pays off, I feel.
Yeah. In terms of like the technical side of things, was there anything in particular that was challenging for you at this point?
I don't know about challenging, but to be clear, we did record the album in 5 days. Is like, you know, it wasn't like a stressful recording session, but you got to keep it moving. You know, we didn't have time to and over analyze certain parts or takes. You know, if the take came out good, all right, let's go to the next thing. You know, like, and I think that keeps things sort of rock and roll. It keeps things energetic and raw and not over labored, which can sort of spoil a record, I think.
What's the kind of like setup for you when you're recording in the studio? Are you like playing at the same time in different rooms? Are you recording parts separately? How do you kind of go about it from a technical point of view?
Well, partially of why we're able to record so fast is because we do record in the same room at the same time. So you get one good take and the drums, the bass, and one guitar done. We'll go in and add, you know, whatever extra elements, and extra guitar for the other channel, vocals, guest vocals, and then again, like synths, whatever we want. But that having that bass tracking done in like 3 times faster, essentially. Super, super helpful. And again, we don't record or play live with a click track, so it would be impossible to do otherwise. We have to play together.
That's a very good point. And that makes a lot of sense, because I was thinking specifically about Hotel Sphinx. You've got this part in the track where the tempo shifts.
Oh, there's a million tempo shifts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was kind of like the one part that I really noticed. So, if you wanted to program that into a click track, that would just be way more trouble than it's worth, I guess.
Annoying, and also like it should feel like organic. It shouldn't feel like perfect tempo changes, you know? The record should sound like 3 musicians who've played together for 10 years making the music from scratch, you know? I feel like that's me, that's more what I like, seek out in music.
Talking about musicians who've been playing together for 10 years, I wanted to ask you something about kind of the origins of the band, because you started out you formed the band in 2005. Is that right?
Yes and no, Tom. I'll be honest with you. I like to think of it as two bands that I was both in with the same name.
Okay.
I came up
Yeah.
with. I started a band when I was 15 years old called Imperial Triumphant. That was a wildly different style, or not wildly, but like more straightforward black metal with different musicians, and then sort of a hiatus when I'm in college, and then when I returned, new lineup, new style of music, more focused concept, and then I would say 2012 is really the true genesis of the band. Then the most exciting thing I'd say is 2015 is when I got the lineup I have now.
Yep.
And that's when everything finally settled in, and we went, oh, these are musicians who like being in the band.
Yeah.
They want to tour, they're hungry, they can all write, they're all interested in doing the music. They're not just doing this, because I'm like, fuck, I need a bass player or whatever, like they're into it.
Yep.
These are made guys, so like that's when you get the core Imperial lineup. And that's anyone watching this, it takes time and perseverance, you're gonna hear, you're gonna be bailed on, you're gonna have to power through if you want to make a band.
Well, that kind of answers the question I was going to ask you, because I was curious to know from that early point of the band, you had on the surface 7 years going from when you started it as a teenager to this point where you had your first album in 2012, and then you had another 3 years till, as you say, the lineup was solidified. So I was kind of really interested to understand how that evolved during that time. But so was there a while where you kind of didn't even necessarily think the band was going to continue, or it just wasn't kind of...
I always was like, this is my band, I'm doing it,
Yeah.
Like going on and committing. But yeah, I mean, when I'm in high school, like we would just play like, we were barely able to play like clubs because we were all underage.
Yeah.
And so we would play like high school, like talent show, what kind of things. Sometimes like I remember there was an all boys school, like a bunch of rowdy motherfuckers, and we from another school, they invited us to go play because they wanted like a metal band at their concert or whatever, So like it was a lot of that stuff, but not like a ton of gigs and not a lot of good recording opportunities because we had no money and no home recording systems were not what they are now or even 10 years ago. So it was just like again, it was a lot more of like a high school garage band kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Not serious, very much just ripping off 90s black metal in every way. And yeah, so but whatever, it was good for me to cut my teeth in whatever way I could. I was hungry.
How long had you been playing before you started Imperial Triumphant? Like, what was your kind of technical capacity?
7 or 8 years old.
And so like what, because I'm curious to know like when the extreme metal filtered in, what were you playing first of all when you started playing? What were like the first things that you wanted to be able to play when you were playing guitar?
Like Hendrix, Zeppelin, maybe a little Black Sabbath, but I didn't really know much about heavy metal. Nobody told me,
Yeah. So how did you get a gateway into that?
My uncle, he bought me a Injustice for All record, like a CD, and then I was like, oh, this is what I was looking for, that kind of epiphany. And then as I'm getting older, getting more into black metal, death metal, extreme stuff, and always thirsty for the most extreme thing, whatever's nastier I wanted, but again, it's not easy back in those days. There wasn't a Spotify recommended playlist of shit,
Yeah.
But that was my journey, and I think I love all sorts of music, but I definitely always seeked out extreme genres.
Yeah. Well, talking about extreme music and also very creative music. So you're working with Colin Marston of Gorguts, who are a pretty incredible creative band. You've worked with him a fair bit before,
I think. Time.
So like, how did you first meet him? And how did that all come together?
So it was going back to those high school days, man. The bass player for the band was like, heard about this guy, Colin, and he was not in Gorguts back then. He was not as popular as he is now, but he was still known, I guess. I heard about this guy, Colin. He's like the metal engineer. We got to go record with him. So we did our first like EP, whatever, with him in like 2008 or I can't remember, but that sort of and then we just clicked with the guy. Like he's just a really great dude and he really, really gets it, which is most important. He understands what we're trying to do. So that also speeds up the recording process.
And does he give you some kind of creative input, or he doesn't sort of step into that role? Like he'll give you ideas if he thinks you might want to like add some instrumentation or change some arrangements?
Yeah, he throws in ideas. He's comfortable with that. He doesn't like, die on his hill for it. Like if we're like, nah, I don't want to do that, he's not going to fight us. But he definitely, he knows us so well. He's like, what if we did this? And most of his ideas, if he comes in with an idea, they're like, oh, fuck, that's a great idea,
Yeah.
And often it's stuff that we wouldn't even think about, like ways of recording XYZ or effects to put in or stuff like that, or, things like that. It's rarely like, oh, you shouldn't play that note, you should play this note instead,
Yeah.
But occasionally, I remember there's some times where he's like, what about you do like fourths instead of, minor seconds or whatever the fuck.
How proficient are you with reading?
I mean, my sight reading is not ideal. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself like an orchestral level sight reader.
Yeah.
But, there's songs on this record where someone came in with just sheet music, and this happened in many records in the past too. It's just sheet music and I got to learn it. But we all have training in music theory and stuff. So it's like, again, it's just like a language. If enough people know it, then you can just speak like that,
So like when you started having, really proper music theory training, were you already listening to extreme metal at that point and gravitating towards that type of music?
Oh yeah. I studied classical composition in college. That was my major.
Right. Okay. Was there a way to kind of incorporate the music that you were particularly interested in at that point? Or were there things from what you were studying that then came into your music?
Yeah, I got really influenced. That's why 2012 is more, that record, Abominamentum, is more dissonant, because I'm got 4 years of, 20th century classical drilled into my brain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's get disgusting. All this 90s black metal from Norway. Like, I can't play like these guys. I'm not from Norway. It's not in my blood, but who I am is like, oh, I've just, I've got all this training in dissonance now. Let's roll tape.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great dimension to have at your fingertips. When did the masks become a thing? How far back does that go?
Maybe 2016, 2017, maybe. Probably 2016, we started thinking about, that's when we had the touring lineup, and that's when we started thinking about the live presentation of the band, I guess. I think we did 2 very, very short tours without masks, but beyond that, it was always something, and it was always sort of like, the idea was to do gold, whether it was going to be brass or whatever, like it's gold and apathetic, sort of just no expressionless.
Yep.
No, not like an evil Halloween mask like a lot of bands like to do. It's just, I think the creepiness comes from absolute, pure disconnect and no emotion. I think that's kind of cool. And a little unique.
Yep. Yeah, there's something kind of otherworldly about it, like either aliens or even though it's not as shocking as like the Clive Barker kind of Hellraiser sort of thing, there's also something detached about it. It's like we're coming from somewhere else. Yeah. And we are indifferent towards you.
Yeah. And I also think, back then there were not as many masks bands.
Yeah. Do you think, does it make a difference to how you feel on stage wearing the masks to make you feel like your characters?
Definitely feels like, I don't know, for a brief second there, it can feel a little cozy, because you're just like, that's all you see is these little holes, no peripheral vision. Yeah. And you have to communicate with this band. It's not even like, we have like click tracks in and we can just zone out and play our parts. Like, we're playing together, and it's like a group effort, and you have to listen. You're not just speaking. You have to listen as well. And the masks definitely help. I don't know why or how, but it just puts you into like I don't know, maybe it puts like a little veil between you and the audience. I don't know. There's something about it that, for me, it makes it pretty easy. I guess I don't have to think about what I look like, because I know I look sad.
Yeah, you have to adjust your hair when you've got a mask in front of it.
I don't worry about I'm making crazy faces or anything. Like, I know my face looks the same in every fucking photo.
Yeah, I don't like having my picture taken, so I can completely relate to the benefit of having a mask on.
Yeah, you should get a Tom mask.
Maybe I could. There's definitely a potential for it. There's just 1 or 2 more questions I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about the some of the African rhythms that you incorporated the album that I read about. So there was the North, I hope I pronounced this correctly, the North African Gnawa on Gomorrah Nouveau, and then Brazilian, oh, that's not African, it's American, Brazilian Maracatu.
Yeah, the maracatu. Yeah, I would say this for anyone who's an expert in Gnawa rhythms, those are not Gnawa rhythms.
Okay.
That I wrote that song, and for me, I was listening to a lot of Gnawa music, and I was like, I love this shit. I'm gonna try to do my version of it.
Yeah,
I don't consider myself learned it enough to really play them properly. But I was like, I'm gonna do what inspire. I'm gonna let it inspire me, and it's not just the rhythms, but it's also like they do a lot of call and response in the vocals, and I was like, oh, I like that. Like I want to do that. Like one guy calls out, and then a whole crowd answers. I think that's cool. And so there's like even more influence than just the rhythms, but like they have a lot of these like percussive elements, like these kind of crispy little rhythms, and I was like, it's fucking sick. I'm gonna play that on my guitar with like again more minor seconds. So why not?
And how did you get exposed to that? Was that something that you were actively seeking out, or?
Well, my drummer, he told me to listen to that stuff, but my bass player, his mom's from Morocco, so he's also got that shit literally in his blood.
Yeah, because you've also got Dave Lombardo appears on the album. Right. And I've interviewed him a couple of times, and I interviewed him a couple of years ago when he was doing his solo album. We talked about how his Cuban roots had a really big impact on him, even on so it was funny. He was talking about certain Slayer tracks, like how particular roles that he did have actually got a Cuban origin. So, and
Kenny grew up playing Latin music, and Latin percussion particularly. So he's coming from a lot of the same, he's not Cuban, but he's got a lot of the similar, I guess, pedigree in his background as a player.
Yeah.
And so they were a natural match.
And so in terms of thinking about the album coming out and how you're going to be promoting it, what have you got lined up in terms of shows and touring?
I can't say that we necessarily at the moment have Glasgow in our sights, fortunately, but we've been to Ireland and we've been to Scotland before, and they were both incredible. So we definitely want to go back. I just need to push my booker a little bit harder, but we definitely have extensive touring coming up. I think we're probably going to do a world tour this year.
And do you have an idea, like when you get ready to do a world tour, do you have in mind how long that's going to be, or it's just going to depend how many things get slotted into place?
I've never done a world tour before, Tom.
All right. Uncharted territory.
Mostly just done Americas and Europe.
Are there any particular parts of the world that you really want to make sure you visit?
Asia, Oceania, South America. And yeah, if we could go play in like Casablanca, that would be incredible. Or we're playing Cairo. Yeah, of course. But those are much loftier goals. We'll see.
Oh, that's very cool. And in general, for people that want to keep track of what the band does have booked for shows, where's the best place for them to get up-to-date information?
Imperial-triumphant.com. You can go to Imperial Triumphant on Instagram and Facebook. We're most active there. Trying to do some TikTok shit, not very good at it. Don't really use Twitter ever, kind of hate it. And I guess that's all of them. We don't use that much YouTube either. So I guess that's mainly, our website or Facebook or Instagram is the best place to get updated.
Cool. Well, Zach, it was great to talk to you. Thank you for your time and thanks for your insights.
Insightful questions, Tom. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. And I recommend everybody to go check out the album Goldstar when it comes out. It's, I think people are going to be really pleased and impressed with it. And I hope that I'll get the chance to see you guys when you're on the road.
Absolutely, man. Have a good one.
Cheers, Zach.